There are moments in history that should never be imagined. Moments so dark that even the gods would tremble to speak of them. What if the War Master had not fallen? What if, in that final duel aboard the Vengeful Spirit, the Emperor hesitated? Just for a heartbeat? And in that heartbeat, humanity died. The Golden Throne never ignited. Terra burned. The screams of billions became the new hymn of mankind. This is that world. This is the galaxy where Horus won. There are no hymns now. No prayers echo through the void. Only silence. And the slow death rattle of a dying god. The throne room of the Vengeful Spirit lies in ruin, a cathedral of madness. Its walls pulse with warped flesh, once metal, now living, breathing, weeping blood. Fractured light flickers through shattered stained glass, illuminating two figures at the center, one fallen, one ascendant. The Emperor of mankind, the Master of humanity, the brightest flame in the darkness, lies broken upon the deck. His once golden armor, forged by faith and will, is cracked and soaked in his own blood. The radiant halo that once crowned his head flickers like a dying star. His sword, that once cut through gods and demons alike, lies a few feet away, hissing softly as warp energy licks its edge. Above him stands Horus Lupercal, the son he loved more than any other. The War Master. The betrayer. His breath comes heavy, half human, half monstrous, his body reshaped by the dark god's gifts. His eyes glow with the fury of the warp, but beneath that crimson light, something human still lingers, regret, perhaps. Or the faint echo of love twisted beyond recognition. Blood drips from his taloned hand. Not his blood. His father's. The galaxy itself seems to hold its breath. Time bends. Even the demons, those howling children of the warp, fall silent to witness the impossible. The Emperor of mankind, the unkillable, the undying, the god who would not be worshipped, lies dead at the hands of his own creation. Horus kneels beside the fallen emperor. His armor creaks, half ceramite, half demon flesh. He reaches out, hesitating. His hand trembles as it brushes against the emperor's chestplate, now split open, revealing the faint golden glow of a dying soul. For a moment, Horus is no longer the War Master, no longer the destroyer of worlds. He is a child again, standing before the father who once promised him a galaxy. And now he has taken that galaxy, by force, by fire, by betrayal. Was it worth it? The question is not spoken aloud, but it burns in his mind like a brand dot behind him. The warp storms rage. Demonic voices whisper triumph, their laughter echoing through the corridors of reality. He is ours, they hiss. The Emperor is dust, and his Imperium burns. But Horus does not smile. His victory feels hollow. The power he dreamed of, the empire he sought to claim, all of it tastes like ash on his tongue. The Emperor's eyes flicker open one last time. Gold fades to dull amber. He tries to speak, but no words come, only blood. His lips form a single shape, sun. And then, nothing. The light dies. The throne room dims. The last warmth in the galaxy vanishes. For the first time in 10,000 years, humanity stands truly alone. Far away on Terra, the skies ignite. The Astronomicon, that great psychic beacon that once guided the ships of men, flickers, then collapses into darkness. The stars themselves seem to retreat, swallowed by the endless storm of the warp. Across 1,000,000 worlds, priests fall to their knees, clutching their icons in disbelief. Psychers scream as their connection to the Emperor severs violently, their minds imploding in a chorus of psychic death. The Golden Throne, that vessel meant to preserve the Emperor's will, remains empty, cold, and dead. The Imperium fractures within moments. Without the Emperor's presence, the Great Rift tears open wider than ever before, splitting the galaxy in half. The warp bleeds into real space, and demons pour through the wound like a plague. The dream of unity dies. The promise of enlightenment burns. Only the echo of a father's scream remains, and the laughter of his wayward son. Horus rises. His eyes turn to the void beyond the ship's hull, where terror burns like a dying sun. He can feel the gaze of the chaos gods upon him, the four great powers watching their champion with hunger and pride. He knows what they want, for him to ascend fully, to cast aside the last fragments of his humanity, and take his place as the god of the new age. But Horus hesitates. His gaze drops once more to the Emperor's corpse. For all his power, he cannot shake the weight of what he has done. The galaxy is his now, but it is a graveyard in the silence. A tear of blood rolls down his cheek. It lands upon the Emperor's cracked armor, sizzling as it touches the remnants of divine light. The air hums. The ship trembles. Something vast stirs in the warp, as if the death of the Emperor has unbalanced the very fabric of creation. And somewhere, in the infinite dark, a whisper begins to spread, a whisper that will echo across eternity. The Emperor is dead. Long live the War Master. The age of mankind has ended. The age of Horus has begun. The throne world is no longer a world, it is a scar, a wound carved so deep into reality that even the stars weep to see it. Terra, cradle of humanity, heart of the Imperium, now lies drowned in ash and shadow. The sky burns crimson, torn open by the endless storms of the warp. Oceans of fire roll across the continents where once stood golden cities and shining spires. Mountains of bone and metal pierce the clouds like tombstones for a dead age. The palace of the Emperor, once the beacon of mankind's unity, now stands as a twisted fortress of horror. Its marble walls have melted into screaming faces. Its domes ooze black ichor where once they reflected the light of the sun. The Aquila banners, the proud wings of humanity, hang in tatters, defiled by the mark of the eye of Horus. And above it all, high upon the broken terraces where the golden throne once glowed, stands the War Master himself. Horus watches his father's world burn with eyes that are no longer human. His armor radiates crimson light, alive and hungry, a fusion of machine, flesh, and warp. Each step he takes leaves molten imprints in the stone. The storm obeys him now. The warp itself bends to his will. But the expression on his face is not joy, it is hunger. It is emptiness. It is the price of victory. Below, the last of the loyalists are hunted through the ruins of the imperial palace. Blood angels, fists, custodes, all shattered remnants, bleeding, broken, hopeless. They fight not for victory now, but for remembrance, that someone might one day whisper that they existed. But there will be no witnesses left. The sons of Horus march through the ash-strewn corridors, their armor stained with the blood of their brothers. Laughter echoes through their vox, madness and triumph intertwined. Above them, demons drift like carrion birds, feeding on the psychic screams of the dying. Everywhere, reality tears. From the skies fall rivers of fire and twisted lightning. The color of rotting gold, the warp and real space have merged. The planet itself is half alive, pulsing like a heart that refuses to die. And from the heart of this storm comes the whisper, the new prayer of mankind. The Emperor is dead. The War Master reigns. The words spread faster than plague. They are carried on corrupted vox signals, painted in blood on the walls of broken cathedrals, screamed by priests who once swore eternal loyalty to the throne. The Mechanicum kneels to the War Master. Their forges, once sacred to the Omnicia, now produce war machines in his image, twisted titans that bear the mark of chaos. Engines powered by bound souls and human agony. The Ecclesiarchy, that vast cult of faith once devoted to the Emperor, collapses into madness. Some tear their eyes out in despair. Others turn their devotion to the new god who has proven himself through blood and victory. Horus, Lord of mankind, slayer of the false god. Temples are rededicated. Statues of the Emperor are dragged down, melted. and reforged into monstrous effigies of the War Master's visage, crowned with horns, wings and burning eyes, humanity broken and lost, bows willingly, not out of love, but out of terror. The streets of Terra are filled with chains and screams. Millions of slaves are marched into the ruins of the Imperial Palace to build a new monument, a throne of flesh and bone, rising where the golden throne once stood. Each life taken adds another step to the pyramid of horror that ascends toward the storm-torn heavens. And there, atop this abomination, Horus sits, no longer man, no longer primarch, but God. His laughter shakes the warp. His eyes burn like twin suns of ruin. The chaos gods gather around him, shadows upon shadows, whispering their blessings. Corn drenches the earth in blood. Nurgle fills the air with pestilence and decay. Tzeentch twists the stars themselves into mocking constellations. Slaanesh sings a lullaby that drowns the last human prayers. In the void above Terra, the Imperial fleet lies in ruin. Battle barges drift, hollowed out and filled with corpses that still cling to their weapons. The once proud phalanx fortress of the Imperial fists now serves as Horus's flagship, its sigils repainted in the eye of terror's crimson glare. The galaxy watches. Worlds that once swore loyalty to the Emperor now turn their allegiance, trembling to the new God-King. Others resist, but only for a time. Without the Astronomicon, without the Emperor's light, their worlds are swallowed one by the growing warp storms. Soon there is no Imperium, only the dominion of Horus. He rules not through faith, but through fear, not through unity, but through silence. In the dark corners of Terra's ruins, a handful of survivors whisper forbidden names: Rogel Dorn, Sanguinius, Gilliman, hoping that one of them still lives. But their prayers are eaten by the storm. The light of humanity is gone, and in its place burns a black sun, the symbol of the War Master's eternal reign. From orbit, the planet glows like a dying coal, red, cracked, alive with chaos energy. A single world that has become the new Eye of Terror. The dream of the Emperor is dust, and in the ashes of his golden empire, Horus laughs. The war did not end with the Emperor's death. It only changed shape. From the corpse of the Imperium rose a new order, a nightmarish dominion of fear and fire, ruled not by faith or unity, but by the will of the War Master Ascendant. And within this new age, there was no room for loyalty, only obedience. The last of the loyalists, those who survived the siege of Terra, scattered like ash in the wind. They fled through the labyrinth of ruins, beneath shattered cathedrals and burning skyships, hunted not just by men, but by gods. The sons of Horus, once brothers to the fallen legions, now bore the marks of damnation. Their armor, once sea green, was now black and red, adorned with trophies of Imperial loyalists, skulls of custodes, banners soaked in the blood of primarchs. Their laughter echoed through the ruins as they stalked the shadows, seeking the last flickers of resistance. And when they found them, there was no battle, only slaughter. In the depths of the Imperial Palace, a handful of surviving custodes formed a last bastion, a shrine built from rubble and prayer. Golden armor dulled by soot, they swore to defend what remained of the Emperor's memory. They stood against hundreds, then thousands, then demons. The sky rained fire as Horus's corrupted legions advanced, chanting his name like a war god's hymn. Warp lightning split the blackened heavens, revealing monstrous silhouettes, half human, half nightmare. Still, the custodes fought. Even as their flesh burned, even as their brothers fell, they fought, because to stop was to dishonor him. Their final stand was not glorious. It was pitiful, beautiful, and utterly human. When the last custodian fell, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies, he whispered a single word, not in prayer, but in defiance: hope. And the demon that tore him apart laughed. For even hope had no place in this new age. Beyond Terra, the purge began. Every world that had sworn loyalty to the Emperor was marked for extermination. The War Master's fleets descended upon them like divine wrath, black ships vomiting fire, their banners blazing with the eye of Horus. On Macragge, the Ultramarines made their final defense. Their proud blue armor turned gray with ash. Guilliman himself vanished into the warp, some said slain. Others whispered he wandered between realities, seeking vengeance that would never come. On Baal, the sky turned crimson as Sanguinius's sons fought under suns that bled. Their Primarch was gone, and yet they fought on, wings of flame torn and burning. Their angel's blood became the first sacrament of martyrdom in a galaxy without gods. On Inwit, the bastions of Dorne cracked under bombardment. The Imperial fists fought until their hammers shattered and their walls crumbled. They died as they lived, standing, and yet, for all their defiance, it was futile. The War Master's reach was absolute. Across the stars, his hunters roamed, word-bearers, chanting scriptures to chaos as they burned monasteries and temples of the old faith. Night Lords, descending like vultures, decorating cities with the corpses of the faithful. World Eaters, drenched in gore, turning entire continents into altars of blood. Each act of murder was worship. Each massacre, a prayer. The galaxy itself became a temple of death, dedicated to Horus. But still, small fires resisted. Remnants of the Raven Guard hid among the void, their stealth fleets striking supply lines and whispering rebellion. Survivors from shattered legions gathered in the black void between stars, forming the remnant armadas, ghosts of the old Imperium, clinging to a dead god's dream. They were hunted relentlessly. Their signal codes cracked, their ships boarded. Their leaders executed. In one transmission, intercepted by Horus's fleet, a desperate captain's voice was heard before his vessel exploded. "We will not kneel. We will not forget." His words were cut short by static and laughter. On Terra, the War Master listened to these messages from his dark throne of bone. Each broadcast of resistance was a hymn to his triumph, a reminder that loyalty still flickered, and that he must extinguish it himself. He ordered the Purge Eternal, a campaign not to conquer, but to erase. Every loyalist bloodline, every archive, every monument of the Emperor's reign, burned, crushed, or buried beneath the red sands. Soon, no one would remember the Emperor as savior, only as the false god slain by his rightful heir. In the warp, the Golden Throne, now a twisted relic of what was, pulsed weakly, echoing the ghost of its former master. Some said they could still hear his scream trapped within it, a dying echo of pain and defiance that refused to fade. To the new regime, it was a trophy. To the few who still believed, it was a curse, and so the galaxy moved on. Under the shadow of the War Master's reign, loyalty became treason, and mercy became weakness. The names of heroes were erased. The statues of saints were melted, and the dream of humanity's ascension, that fragile spark the Emperor had ignited, was trampled into the dust. The stars themselves seemed to dim. Each world conquered by Horus became another candle snuffed out in the endless night, until there was only one truth left to speak, whispered by soldiers, slaves and sinners alike. There is no mercy. There is no retreat. There is only Horus. The galaxy burns, not with war, but with worship. 10,000 suns glow red through the haze of smoke and warp fire. Worlds that once prayed to the Emperor now kneel beneath the eye, and at the heart of it all, enthroned upon the bones of Terra, sits Horus, the first War Master, the God King of mankind. But what he has built is not an empire. It is a wound. The Eye of Terror is no longer a storm contained in the void. It is spread, an ever-expanding rift tearing through the Imperium. Every planet it touches becomes a reflection of its master's will, half reality, half nightmare. Mountains whisper, oceans bleed, and the very air hums with blasphemy. Those who gaze upon the skies see the visage of the War Master, vast and radiant, eyes burning like twin suns of hatred. They fall to their knees not out of faith, but from the crushing weight of his presence. The age of the eye has begun. Terra, once the jewel of humanity, is now a black temple world. The ruined palace has been rebuilt as a colossal cathedral of iron and bone, its spires shaped like twisted claws reaching toward a bleeding sky. Rivers of molten metal flow through streets lined with chained psychers, their screams powering the new throne of the War Master. Upon that throne sits Horus, his armor fused with flesh, a halo of warp flame crowning his head. His face, scarred, divine, inhuman, is reflected upon 1,000 altars across the galaxy. Where once the Imperial creed sang of the Emperor's light, now they chant the litany of dominion. He who slew the false god shall rule eternal. Priests, demons, and corrupted Mechanicum Magi broadcast his image into the stars. Children are born under his gaze. They learn to fear the name of the Emperor as a curse, the name of a liar, a god who failed his creation. The legions of the War Master have been reforged in his image. No longer divided by loyalty or primarch, they are bound by singular devotion. The sons of Horus lead, but all corrupted legions serve beneath one banner, the Eye. Each world offers its tithe in flesh and soul. Armies of twisted Astartes march alongside mutated humans. Demon-possessed engines, and heretic constructs that hum with dark prayers. The word-bearers now act as high priests, spreading the gospel of ascension through fire and ritual. The Iron Warriors rebuild worlds into fortress shrines, their iron fortifications crowned with crucified saints. The World Eaters roam as holy executioners, purging entire sectors in ecstatic violence. Even the 1,000 Suns, once fractured and cursed, return as Horus's librarians of forbidden knowledge, rewriting history itself in the War Master's favor. Together, they forge not an Imperium, but a pantheon. History is rewritten. The Emperor is now remembered as the betrayer. His image burned, his name erased. Those who whisper otherwise are branded echoes, hunted by inquisitors of the Eye and publicly flayed upon altars. Libraries burn, monuments crumble, and entire generations grow up believing the War Master saved humanity from a false god. The administratum becomes the dominion of truth, enforcing the new faith with perfect brutality. Every record, every data crystal, every prayer book is rewritten. Truth is no longer something to be known. It is something to be imposed. Deep beneath the surface of Terra, where once the Emperor's golden throne stood, something stirs. It is said the machine still hums faintly, like a dying heart, psychers chained to its base scream of a presence trapped within, a light that refuses to go out. Some say it is the soul of the Emperor, others say it is the last echo of mankind's hope. Horus orders the machine sealed. He calls it the cage of a false god, a relic of weakness unfit for his new dominion. But at night, when the void winds howl across the broken spires of Terra, the sound can be heard, a soft, endless cry. Not of pain, not of rage, but of grief. Centuries pass. The galaxy no longer remembers the Emperor's dream. His statues are dust, his sons are myths. Only Horus remains, immortal, sustained by the chaos that flows through every world, every life. He sits upon his throne as galaxies bow before him, his form more demon than man. Yet, within his victory, there is unease. The gods whisper. The warp hungers. And even he, the greatest of all champions, feels the chains of his masters tightening. In the silence of his temple, he gazes into the void, into the eye that bears his name, and wonders whether he truly conquered, or merely became another prisoner of the war that never ends. In the deepest vaults of Terra, a lone servo-skull drifts through the ruins of the old Imperial palace. Its decayed optics project a flickering image, the face of the Emperor, recorded long ago. Mankind was meant to rise, the echo says, distorted and broken. Not to kneel, the machine crackles, sparks, and dies. The sound fades into the endless chanting of Horus's priests above. The age of the eye continues, eternal, unbroken, and utterly damned. And somewhere, in the farthest corner of the galaxy, a single spark still burns. Small, defiant, forgotten. Perhaps the story is not yet over. There are no banners left. No worlds that still bear the Aquila. The galaxy is a graveyard, a silent empire lit only by the fires of obedience. And yet, something stirs in the dark. It begins as a whisper, a rumor carried between slaves and soldiers, words older than the eye, older than the lie of the War Master. The Emperor still watches. No one knows where the rumor begins. Perhaps a dying psyker dreams it. Perhaps it escapes from the throne beneath Terra, bleeding through rusted metal and dust. But wherever it comes from, it spreads. And the fire follows. On the rim of the galaxy lie the Ash Worlds, desolate planets abandoned after Horus's conquest. Here, the air itself is poison, and cities lie buried beneath mountains of ash. Yet within these wastelands, the first rebels gather, descendants of soldiers who once served the throne, scavengers, and forgotten Astartes deserters, their armor broken, their insignias scraped away. They have no leaders, no gods, only memory. They call themselves the Forgotten, and they speak in prayers no longer understood. By his light, we endure. They write those words on walls in blood, hiding from the patrols of chaos enforcers. When captured, they are burned alive, but the ashes spread, and every burning becomes another sermon. In the void beyond the eye, where reality still trembles, a shape moves between shadows, a fleet without name, silent and black. These are the Raven Guard, or what remains of them. After centuries of exile, they return, pale, haunted, their armor adorned with the skulls of chaos captains. Their primarch is long dead, their oaths forgotten, yet they fight. Not for victory, but for remembrance. They strike in silence, cutting communication relays, sabotaging orbital shrines, assassinating Horus's priests in their own cathedrals. Each act is small, insignificant, but to those living under the War Master's shadow, it feels like the first breath after drowning. Whispers begin anew, the shadows move again. The Emperor's will endures. Cathedrals collapse in silence. Entire congregations vanish overnight, leaving only the mark of a two-headed eagle scorched into the stone. The priests call it heresy. The people call it signs. Soon, tails spread of figures walking among the crowds, cloaked wanderers whose faces glow faintly in darkness, whose touch burns corruption away. They are called the faithless saints. No one knows if they are human, ghost, or machine. Some say they are the Emperor's last dream given form. Others say they are lies spread by surviving custodies, but their presence changes everything. Faith, the oldest weapon of mankind, returns. And for the first time in 1,000 years, fear begins to turn upon itself. In the heart of Terra, Horus feels it. A disturbance that gnaws at his perfection. His temples begin to crack. His priests stutter in their chants. The warp itself flickers like a dying flame. From his throne of bone, Horus gazes into the void, and for the first time since his ascension, he feels something alien. Not resistance, not rebellion, but doubt. He orders the purge of shadows, entire sectors cleansed, planets burned to glass. Millions die in silence, but it changes nothing. Every execution becomes another martyrdom. Every death becomes a whisper. And the whispers become a storm. Deep beneath Terra, within the sealed chamber of the cage of the false god, a pulse awakens. The golden throne hums again. Sparks of psychic fire drift through the chamber like ghostly embers. Within the ancient machinery, something remembers, not a god, but a man who refused to die. The voice that follows is faint, broken by static and time. You will not kneel forever. A mechanicum servitor records it, transmits it into the data void, And from there, across the galaxy, thousands hear it in their dreams. Some wake screaming. Others wake weeping. The message spreads faster than any army. And the rebellion becomes prophecy. The forgotten rise. On the ash worlds, banners of bone and rust flutter in radioactive wind. In the void, the Raven Guards strike at supply fleets. In the Eye's core, demon princes find their icons defaced, twin-headed eagles painted in their blood. The War Master's empire shakes, not from war, but from memory. Humanity, once broken, begins to remember what it was. Not divine, not perfect, but defiant. In the final vision of this age, beneath the cracked skies of Terra, an old child, a beggar born into Horus's empire, kneels beside a guttering torch. He looks toward the horizon, where thunder rolls. He doesn't know what he's waiting for. He only feels the fire, and as he whispers the words, the Emperor protects. The wind catches, and the torch burns brighter. Across the stars, millions repeat the same phrase, unaware of each other, unaware of history. The galaxy remains doomed. The Eye still devours. But for the first time in 10,000 years, it trembles. There comes a point in every age of tyranny when silence becomes the loudest scream. For centuries under Horus's reign, the galaxy burned quietly, its people reduced to ash and servitude. The War Master's dominion was absolute. His war fleets scoured the stars. His priests twisted faith into worship of the Eye, and his legions hunted any who dared whisper the Emperor's name. But the warp remembers. And in the ashes of forgotten worlds, something begins to stir. It starts as a pattern, scattered uprisings, sabotage, sparks of impossible defiance. A manufactorum explosion on Vrax 4 that kills an entire Chaos garrison. A ghost ship emerging from the warp, broadcasting the old hymns of the Great Crusade. Each event small, isolated, until they begin to connect. Across dying star systems, coded messages pass between mortals, Astartes remnants, and even repentant traitors. A single sigil marks them, a burning two-headed eagle, drawn not in paint or ink, but in blood and fire. They call themselves the Fireborn. The Fireborn are not an army. They are a contagion of hope, a whisper made flesh. Former Imperial Guard, hive slaves, sisters who hid their faith in silence. Even corrupted space marines who have clawed their way back from damnation, united not by command, but by fury. Their creed is simple. The Emperor may have fallen, but his fire lives in us. The first world to fall from Horus's control is Cutter Primus, a demon fortress planet in the Eye's shadow. For decades, it was a world of living horror, its air thick with screams, its soil soaked in blood. Now through the fog and flame come the Fireborn. No banners, no war horns, only torches and fury, led by Seraphon the Broken, a once blinded sister of battle whose eyes now burn with psychic gold. The Fireborn descend upon the city hives like angels of vengeance. Demon engines roar, corrupted titans stride, but the Fireborn fight like souls possessed. They have no reinforcements, no retreat, only the belief that dying for the Emperor's memory is better than living under Horus's empire. And when the last demon falls, the people of Cutter Primus rise from the ruins, every survivor marking their faces with ash and fire. That night, across the warp, other worlds ignite. The War Master does not ignore rebellion. From his throne upon the war moon Malium, he watches the uprising through the eyes of his sorcerers, each world that burns a thorn in his eternal rule. He remembers this pattern. He lived it once, long ago, against the Imperium he destroyed. Now he sees it mirrored against him. Rage consumes him. He orders the Sons of the Eye, his last loyal traitor legions, to scour every rebelling system. But every victory breeds more defiance. Every atrocity feeds the fire, and in the darkest corners of the galaxy, even some of his own champions begin to falter. A Black Legion warlord refuses to bombard a city of unarmed civilians. A chaos sorcerer burns his grimoires and surrenders himself to the flames, whispering, "Forgive me, Father of mankind." The corruption that birthed Horus's empire now begins to devour it. Months pass, or years. Time loses meaning in the warp-scarred void. But rumors spread faster than truth. It is said that among the Fireborn walks a child, a boy who glows faintly with golden light, whose words silence demons, whose tears turn ash into living soil. Some call him a psyker. Others call him the Emperor's echo. Wherever he walks, the dying rise. Wherever he speaks, the flames burn brighter. Entire systems now rally under the Fireborn sigil. And at last, the scattered fragments of humanity unite beneath one impossible vow: to strike at the heart of the War Master's dominion, to bring the war back to the vengeful spirit, and to end the Age of the Eye. The final image is that of a shattered galaxy, every world alight. Warp storms raging, banners of fire cutting through the void. The Fireborn fleet rises from the shadows, its ships cobbled together from scavenged ruins, its warriors chanting prayers older than memory. Their engines burn not with plasma, but with faith. In the darkness of space, a single voice echoes across the void: "The Emperor is not dead. His fire burns within us all." And for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy trembles, not in fear, but in hope. The age of the War Master begins to bleed. The rise of the Fireborn has begun. There are wars that end worlds, and then there are wars that end belief itself. The Fireborn knew they could not win. They had no primarchs, no god to guide them, only the dying light of faith and the ghost of a promise that humanity had almost forgotten. But still, they came, from the broken systems of the Eye, from hive ruins and orbital debris, from prison moons and demon worlds. The Fireborn fleet rose like a funeral pyre. Thousands of scavenged vessels, their hulls painted with fire and ash, converged upon the crimson world of Malium, the throne of the War Master. The warp howled as they came. Reality screamed. The void itself bled. Malium was not a planet, it was a wound in the stars. A black sphere shrouded in warp storms, its surface alive with demonic cities and rivers of molten soul metal. At its core stood the throne basilica, where Horus sat like a god of ash and rot. Behind him, the Eye of Terror pulsed, vast, alive, hungry. The Fireborn fleet entered orbit in silence. Their ships burned with faith, their engines chanting in Ben-Huruk hymns. And then, with no signal, no command, no retreat, they charged. Thousands of torch-lit ships crashed through the demonic fleets. For every one that burned, another ignited its reactor deliberately. Martyrdom turned into weaponry. Warp fire consumed the void, painting Malium's sky red. On the surface, the Fireborn descended like angels falling through hellfire. Columns of flame streaked through the black sky as drop pods, wrecks, and bodies rained upon the demon fortresses. The first to land was Seraphane the Broken, her armor cracked and her halo burning white. She led her warriors to the Iron Gate of Malium, a structure carved from the bones of 1,000 titans. At her command, the Fireborn raised their relics, whispered their creed, and detonated their own blood charges. The gate shattered, and with it, the illusion of Horus's invincibility. Inside, the air was thick with screams. The dead walked. The walls pulsed like flesh. And yet, through that living hell, the Fireborn advanced, torch by torch, prayer by prayer. In the basilica, the War Master stirred. Once a warrior of unmatched honor, now a titan of nightmare, Horus rose from his throne of skulls, his body sheathed in burning shadow. His face was no longer human. It was a shifting mask of gods and monsters. He felt the Fireborn's faith like a knife in his heart. He remembered Terra. He remembered his father's light, and the moment he extinguished it. That memory burned him more deeply than any blade could. With a roar that split the sky, Horus descended into the battlefield. His strike shattered mountains, his voice drowned out artillery, his presence erased hope. Every step he took left molten ground, and yet the Fireborn did not flee. The child was there, the boy of light. He walked barefoot through flame and ruin, his eyes burning gold, untouched by the warp's corruption. When Horus approached, the fires dimmed. The War Master hesitated. "Who are you?" Horus thundered. The child looked up and spoke softly. "I am what you could not kill." The War Master struck, but his blade never found flesh. Instead, golden fire erupted from the child's body, engulfing both armies in blinding light. In that instant, every Fireborn fell to their knees. Every demon screamed. And Horus, the War Master, the son of the Emperor, saw his reflection not as a god, but as the murderer of his own soul. He screamed. The light consumed him. Malium began to die. From orbit, the Fireborn fleet saw the world collapse. The warp storms tore open, devouring the demon cities and the basilica. The Eye of Terror flared one last time, then dimmed. A dying star in a dying age. When the light faded, Malium was gone. Only silence remained, but across the galaxy, faint golden embers began to flicker, torches, candles, even the glow of prayer screens reignited after centuries of darkness. The message spread faster than light. The fire still burns. And though the galaxy remained scarred, though chaos still whispered and war still raged, hope had returned. Not in thrones or empires, but in the hearts of the forgotten. The siege of Malium was not victory. It was resurrection. And the Fireborn, the last children of the Emperor, had lit the stars again. When the fires faded, there was only silence. No hymns, no thunder of war, no gods whispering through the warp. Only the stillness of aftermath. Malium was gone, erased from the stars as if reality itself had grown tired of holding its name. The Eye of Terror dimmed, reduced to a faint scar of light bleeding weakly across the void. A wound that would never truly close. In its absence, the galaxy began to breathe again, though every breath was a memory of pain. Peace had returned, but in the far future, peace was never peace. It was merely the silence between screens. The Fireborn were broken. Their fleets, once blazing with righteous fury, now drifted as skeletal remains among shattered moons and dead suns. The survivors, few, starving, haunted, gathered where they could, among the ruins of demon citadels and shattered shrine worlds. On the dead plains of Keter Primus, where the sky still bled red from the warp storms that once consumed it, they began to rebuild. Not out of victory, but necessity. They stacked the bones of their dead into walls. They forged steel from the wreckage of fallen gods. They spoke not of glory or vengeance, but of endurance. There were no more prayers. No one dared to speak the Emperor's name as divine. Instead, they carved into the stone of their new temples a single phrase: "He was never a god. He was our fire." It was blasphemy to the old Imperium, but to them, it was the only truth left. They had seen gods, monstrous, deceitful things that fed on belief. And they had seen what blind faith could do. From that understanding rose something strange, something human, a creed of remembrance. They worshipped not gods, but the will to live. The Fireborn were no longer crusaders. They had become witnesses to the death of divinity. Centuries turned like rusted gears. The Fireborn vanished into legend, their names whispered by those who still dared to remember. From their ashes, a new order emerged, the Hollow Imperium. It was not built on worship, but on memory. Its banners bore no sigils of gods or eagles, only a hollow sun burning faintly against black cloth. Its rulers spoke softly, their oaths bound not to the divine, but to the dead. They carried the archives of the old Imperium as relics, not to venerate, but to remember what must never be repeated. Their creed was simple: no god will save us. We save each other, For a time, the galaxy calmed. Warp storms thinned, and the void quieted. But peace in the 41st millennium is only ever the pause before the next fall. Whispers began to rise again, faint and hungry. The echo of the old gods, reforming from scraps of forgotten belief. The shade of Horus's dominion, drifting like a ghost through the stars. Temptation, memory, and faith, all trying to claw their way back into being. The hollow Imperium fought not with weapons, but with silence. They erased names from records. They denied miracles. They refused to give the warp what it craved most, belief. And in their denial, the gods began to starve. On Terra, beneath miles of catacombs, stood the empty throne. Once the seat of a god-emperor, now nothing but a monument of dust and faded gold. No one sat upon it, yet the air shimmered faintly with golden motes, as if light itself still remembered its purpose. Pilgrims came as they always had. Some prayed, others wept. But most stood in silence, unsure if what they felt was reverence or grief. Rumors persisted. Some claimed the emperor's voice whispered in their dreams. Others spoke of a child born with eyes of burning gold, a new light rising from the void. The hollow Imperium did not seek him. They had learned the cost of gods, and they would not pay it again. In the far reaches, a single ship drifted, the Seraphana's promise. Inside, among flickering lights and the hum of dying engines, a recording played in endless loop. A voice, worn and fading, spoke across eternity. If you hear this, know that we were not saved. We endured. That is enough. The message echoed through space, bouncing off forgotten satellites and derelict hulks, whispering through the ages. Civilizations rose and fell, and some, upon hearing it, found new purpose. They built their lives around the voice, not as a prophet's command, but as a reminder: survival is sacred. The emperor was gone. The gods were gone. The age of faith had ended, but his fire, the idea of defiance, of will, remained. Hollow, imperfect, but eternal. That was the dawn of the hollow Imperium. Not salvation, not damnation, only survival, and in survival, a new kind of faith. A faith not in gods, but in mankind itself. In the long twilight of the hollow Imperium, silence was no longer peace. It was a weight, the kind that pressed against the stars and lingered in every breath. The wars had ended, but the memory of them had not. Whole generations had lived without seeing a demon or hearing the name of a god, yet something in the dark still moved. It began as dreams, a whisper in the quiet minds of miners working beneath forgotten moons, a flicker of gold in the eyes of a child who had never known faith. A song carried through the void, too faint to hear, too haunting to ignore. The galaxy had learned to forget the gods, but the gods had not forgotten the galaxy. They returned not as armies or storms, but as memories. In the edges of old data vaults, corrupted hymns reappeared. On the walls of ruined shrines, faint handprints bled through the stone. A word, lost to time, found itself being spoken again, not shouted, not prayed, just murmured by those who did not understand why they spoke it. Warmaster. The name was poison, a vibration that made glass crack and minds tremble. In distant colonies, strange fires burned without fuel. Machines began to malfunction under invisible pressure. Those who studied the anomalies spoke of a pattern, a pulse that resonated with the rhythm of human fear itself. The hollow Imperium tried to deny it. Their archivists erased reports, burned records, silenced anyone who claimed to have seen the signs. They had built their new civilization on the grave of faith. To admit the old gods still lived was to risk everything. Yet whispers spread. Among the poorest hives, children spoke of the eye that watches. In the halls of power, visions of the past returned. Generals saw shadows of burning wings behind their own reflections. Some claimed to dream of the Emperor's golden light flickering, fading, and then turning red. Others heard a voice calling them to look inward, not for salvation, but for power. On the world of Varn Ix, the first awakening occurred. A storm of ash swept across its surface, blotting out the sun for 7 days. When it cleared, half the population had vanished. Those who remained spoke in tongues, eyes glowing faintly with warp light. They built altars from their own dead and carved new sigils that no one recognized, yet somehow everyone feared. When the Hollow Imperium's forces arrived to contain it, they found cities transformed into living structures, walls breathing and streets whispering in agony. At the center of the capital stood a monument made of fused bodies, their faces twisted upward in silent devotion. Beneath it was carved one phrase, "He remembers." The Hollow Imperium's silence, once their greatest weapon, became their curse. For silence leaves space, and space is where the whispers live. The creed of endurance began to fracture. Some believed the voices were warnings, that the galaxy was crying out, begging to be remembered. Others began to listen willingly, finding comfort in the idea that something greater still watched them. Small cults formed in the shadow of forgotten shrines. They painted their faces with ash, carved the eye of Horus into their palms, and spoke softly of redemption, not for mankind, but for the War Master himself. In the labyrinthine catacombs beneath Terra, where the empty throne still stood untouched, a strange phenomenon occurred. Golden motes, once faint and cold, began to glow again. For the first time in millennia, the air vibrated with a hum like distant thunder. The custodians who guarded the tomb felt unease gnawing at their faithless hearts. Some claimed they saw a figure, tall, cloaked in shadow, standing beside the throne, hand resting where once a god had sat. The figure's eyes glowed faint red, and its voice, when it spoke, was not command or wrath. It was sorrow. "I remember." Then it vanished. Across the stars, the message spread, a whisper carried in code, in dream, in blood. "He remembers." Entire sectors began to fracture. The Hollow Imperium's leadership, desperate to contain the unrest, turned to ancient archives long sealed. What they found there terrified them. The words of the Fireburn, the final message of Seraphon, "We endured." That is enough. But endurance was no longer enough. The galaxy was stirring, and the line between memory and resurrection was blurring. The whispers spread, subtle and unstoppable. Dreams became sermons. Silence became prayer. And somewhere beyond the stars, in the place where the Emperor's light once burned brightest, something smiled, a memory reborn, a god remade. The dawn of the Hollow Imperium was ending, and the long night of remembrance was about to begin. In the final age of the Hollow Imperium, time itself began to unravel. The galaxy had grown quiet again, but this silence was no longer empty. It listened. The warp no longer roared as it once did. It whispered, echoing with the soft murmur of prayers that were never spoken aloud. Across 1,000 hollow worlds, people had stopped denying the gods. They no longer built temples or sang hymns, but belief, faint, involuntary belief, had returned like breath after drowning. It came not from devotion, but from memory. And memory was far more dangerous than faith. The whispers had evolved. No longer spectral voices haunting dreams. They now spoke through emotion, through longing. When a mother grieved her dead child, the air around her would shimmer with faint golden motes. When a soldier fought and bled, faces appeared in the smoke, watching. The universe had become sentient with remembrance. Every act of suffering, every flicker of hope, resonated across the veil, feeding something vast and unseen. The Fireburn had once burned for endurance, but now their descendants burned for meaning. And in that search for meaning, they began to call on the shattered moon of Tarmus. A cult known as the Echo Keepers unearthed a relic, a fragment of armor blackened and warped by time. Etched with a single sigil, the eye. They believed it to be Horus's heartplate, preserved in the fabric of the warp itself. They did not worship it. They studied it, meditated before it, whispered their grief into it. But slowly their voices began to change, harmonizing with something unseen. When the last of them fell silent, the fragment began to hum. Its glow spread across the surface of Tarmus like infection. And for the first time in millennia, the eye opened again. The hollow Imperium panicked. The custodians who guarded Terra felt the warp pulse for the first time in generations. Ships vanished in transit. Worlds lost their suns. The Emperor's throne began to hum softly, its golden light flickering like a dying candle. The priests who had sworn to silence found themselves speaking without will, reciting prayers that had been forgotten for 10,000 years. The galaxy trembled under the weight of memory resurrected. It began not with gods returning, but with people remembering them too clearly. Their images became sharper in thought, their legends retold with more passion. Statues were rebuilt not as idols, but as history. But history is a dangerous thing when it bleeds into myth. The more humanity remembered, the more real the old powers became. In the warp, the shapes of gods began to stir, not as they once were, but as humanity now imagined them, wounded, half divine, half human, shaped by collective guilt and longing. Horus no longer appeared as a warlord. He appeared as a grieving son, reaching toward a father who had never forgiven him. And somewhere, deep in the dying embers of the Astronomicon, a faint voice answered. The Emperor's presence, once thought extinguished, flickered within the throne's golden core. Not as a blazing god, but as a shadow, fragmented, hollow, exhausted. He remembered everything, the betrayal, the heresy, the death of hope. And in that memory, something in him broke. The Emperor no longer sought to rule. He only wanted it to end. Yet the galaxy would not let him die. Millions across the stars whispered his name again, not as prayer, but as regret. And the warp, ever hungry, began to shape that regret into something real. The light of the Emperor and the shadow of Horus began to intertwine once more. No longer enemies, but echoes of the same wound. On a distant world known as Ulan's Fall, under a dying red sun, a miracle or a curse occurred. A child was born with one golden eye and one black. When she cried, her tears burned holes in the earth. When she laughed, the air shimmered. Her presence drew pilgrims from every system. The hollow Imperium tried to contain it, calling her a mutation, a psychic anomaly. But in the eyes of the desperate, she was something else, the convergence, the embodiment of both divine light and eternal shadow. They called her Echo. The universe pulsed once more, and everything changed. When the light faded, there were no gods, no thrones, no faith, only a calm, endless sky filled with dust and memory. Humanity remained, scattered, scarred, yet free. The warp still existed, but it no longer devoured or deceived. It became quiet, a mirror instead of a monster. The hollow Imperium fell, but not in ruin, in release. And in the centuries that followed, those who remained built not empires, but sanctuaries. They called this new age the era of echoes. Not of worship, but of remembrance. A time when mankind finally understood that gods were only reflections of themselves. The Emperor was no longer a deity, Horus no longer a villain. They were stories, tragic, necessary, human. And in that understanding, the galaxy, for the first time in 10,000 years, found peace. No prayers, no thrones, no chains. Only the echo of divinity, fading slowly, beautifully, into silence. There comes a time when even memory loses its shape, when history no longer bleeds but drifts, thin as dust between dying suns. The Imperium is gone now, not in flame or collapse but in erosion. Like the waves wearing down a mountain, The ages have stripped away every banner, every name, every scream that once echoed through the void. What remains is silence, vast, beautiful, and merciless. The galaxy no longer belongs to empires or gods. Where once the eye of terror devoured light, there's only a faint shimmer, a soft distortion in the fabric of space, as if reality remembers something too painful to recall. The worlds once bound by Horus's dominion hang scattered and free, hollow orbs drifting through the cold, their cities reclaimed by time. Vines crawl over marble thrones. Steel rusts into dust. Even the stars themselves seem weary, their light dimmed by the memory of endless war, and yet, life persists. Small, flickering, fragile, but alive. On the ruins of a nameless world, children play among the shattered icons of the past, carving new symbols into the stone with hands too young to understand what they replace. Their laughter carries where once there were only hymns and screams. The Fireburn are long gone, their ships lost, their names forgotten, but something of their fire remains. Not in armies or creeds, but in the simple act of survival. In the will to live without worship, to look at the sky and not bow to it. Some say the Emperor's light still watches from beyond the stars. Others whisper that Horus's shadow still coils within the warp, waiting to rise again. But these are only stories now, soft and worn like river stones, passed from one generation to the next. In truth, no god remains to judge, no demon remains to corrupt. The warp itself has grown quiet, its storms fading into strange calm. Perhaps the gods have starved, forgotten by the prayers that once fed them. Perhaps they were never gods at all, only echoes of the souls who believed too hard in their own importance. Among the drifting remnants of Terra's orbit floats a colossal, broken relic, a fragment of the Golden Throne. Its surface scarred with 1,000 wars and sanctified in 1,000 more. Within it, something still glows, faint, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. No one dares to approach it. The few who try vanish into light or silence. Some claim it is the Emperor's final dream, still echoing through eternity. Others say it is the last memory of mankind, trying to remember itself before the dark fully closes in the farthest reaches of the void. A ship drifts, a remnant from the old age, its engines long dead, its crew frozen into statues of glass and frost. In its chapel, a single candle burns, untouched by time or vacuum. Its flame is small but unwavering, reflecting against the metal walls like 1,000 tiny suns. It flickers each time a star dies. It brightens each time a new one is born. It is not holy nor cursed, it simply is. And that is enough. The galaxy has entered an age without witnesses. There are no chronicles, no prophets, no emperors, only whispers carried by cosmic winds. Some say that in the deepest night, if you listen between the stars, you can hear voices faint and distant, like a song sung by ghosts. They speak not of victory or defeat, but of endurance, of what it means to keep existing when all purpose has burned away. One voice among them, quiet, almost tender, speaks words no one remembers learning. From ashes we were born. Through fire we became. In silence we remain. And then, nothing. No light. No sound. Only the breath of the cosmos, ancient, infinite, and utterly indifferent. But if you stand beneath the fractured sky of a ruined world, if you close your eyes and reach out beyond the silence, you might feel it, faint, fragile, but real, the pulse of something greater than gods or empires. The heartbeat of humanity, still echoing in the dark. The silence between stars is not death. It is the moment before the next story begins. At first, there is nothing. No light, no sound, no prayer, only the faint vibration of existence, trembling in the dark like the last breath of a dying god. For an eternity that cannot be measured, the galaxy sleeps, its bones cold, its spirit scattered, and then faintly a pulse, not of flesh or machine, but of thought, raw, primitive, and newborn. It echoes across the stars like the memory of a heartbeat, and the void shivers in reply. From that tremor, dust gathers. Light flickers. The silence fractures. The long night begins to fade, not with the return of empires, but with the whisper of awareness far beyond the remnants of the old Imperium. On a world unnamed by any tongue, the air moves for the first time in centuries. The sky cracks open with soft gold. Beneath it, the ruins of a civilization stir. From beneath mountains of ash and metal, figures emerge, thin, translucent, almost luminous. They are not human as humanity once was. Their eyes glow faintly with twin lights, one of gold, one of shadow. The inheritance of gods long gone. They speak no language, yet their movements are deliberate, ancient, remembered. They gather in circles around the ruins of temples that no longer hold names. One among them kneels, placing a hand on the ground, and the stone beneath ripples with faint light. Symbols awaken, burned into the soil by forgotten faith. The eye, the aquila, the throne, all merging, all meaningless. And from their union rises something new, a sigil no one has seen before, glowing like dawn through smoke across the galaxy. Strange awakenings follow. On the edge of dead systems, dormant machines stir. Servitors reanimate without command, whispering fragments of hymns in broken binary. Planets long silent suddenly hum with low, harmonic resonance, the sound of the warp shifting again, not in rage, but in rebirth. And far within the void, where the eye once bled into reality, a single point of light flares, not crimson, but pure white. It pulses once, twice, then expands, like the inhale of a sleeping giant. Scholars of the New Age, if such beings could be called that, do not know what it means. They record what they can in etchings and song. They call it the next dawn, but to some it feels familiar, as if the galaxy itself, weary of gods and war, is exhaling, creating again, not from faith, but from memory. The human spirit, scattered across eternity, reassembling itself into something unrecognizable yet deeply true. The figures that rise from the ashes begin to build, not in stone or steel, but in light and sound. Cities form like mirages, shimmering structures woven from the resonance of their voices. There is no hierarchy, no command, no throne. Only the collective hum of existence, countless beings moving in harmony, each carrying a fragment of what came before: courage, cruelty, devotion, defiance. All that made humanity what it was, reshaped, refined, imagined. And yet, even here, shadows linger. For every light that rises, another trembles. In the deep folds of space, beyond this fragile dawn, something ancient stirs, not a god, not a memory of will. The War Master's echo. Horus, or what he became, drifts through the warp like a thought unforgotten. And as the newborn civilizations rise, they unknowingly repeat his gesture, reaching toward the sky, hungering for more. It begins again. But this time, there's no emperor to oppose him, no chaos to define him, only the echo of choice and the weight of legacy. From the remnants of forgotten stars, a voice, not divine, not human, speaks in the silence. We have seen what gods become. Now let us see what we can be without them. And with those words, the dawn breaks fully. Golden light spills across ruined worlds. Oceans boil, atmospheres roar, and the universe awakens, not as a realm of order or ruin, but as a canvas reborn. The warp breathes in rhythm with reality. Life emerges like sparks from embers. On a lonely hill beneath that newborn sun, one of the luminous figures looks upward. In their reflection, two faint shapes shimmer in the clouds, one golden, one shadowed, standing together at last. The figure smiles, not in reverence, not in fear, but in recognition that the silence between stars is gone. The next story has begun.